We just gave our apps a voice. Now let's give our agents one. By exposing the speech service through MCP, so any MCP-aware agent can listen and speak without you writing the plumbing. Hi, I'm Rob Folkrod, a lead technical trainer at Microsoft. In this session, we'll cover connecting agents to the Azure AI Speech Service using MCP. We'll start by understanding the MCP server and then connect to its tools and call it from an agent. Let's get started. All right, we've seen this pattern before with text analytics. We started with text analytics by learning the service after contrasting it with a large language model. Then we saw that we can bring the two together. So I want you to imagine a scenario where you have a very specific language model being used in your agent. Right? That language model may not be incredibly good at speech to text or text to speech, and yet it fits the bill in many other ways. Maybe it's very small and capable of doing just enough. It's keeping the pricing down, and so and it gives us a nice response time, but it has no real ability to do text to speech or speech to text, and yet that's still a requirement. But as long as it can contact an MCP server, we're going to be in good shape. So here we have a scenario where a user sends a prompt to an agent containing text or a link to an audio file. And then we're going to need to go ahead and use those Foundry tools. So here the agent determines the task or task to be performed. It looks through its toolbox and says, I have an MCP tool all ready to go. Then it calls that tool, passing the information in. We're using those back-end tools again. We send the information back to the large language model. In this case, text-to-speech, the audio is generated and saved to an Azure storage account where it can then be retrieved. The link to it will be included in the payload going back to the client. Okay. The agent responds to the user with a transcribe link. So the pattern that we've seen is very similar to what we saw before when we expose an MCP server. We have a little bit more legwork that we're going to need to do ahead of time, but a couple of things you're going to include in here. The first, you're going to include a reference back to your Foundry resource, right? You just enter that in this little box here. And then you're going to access or add the authentication. How are we communicating back? That'll be done potentially by API key or by something like a managed identity. But then you're going to need, already set up, you're going to need a storage account. If we are using something like text-to-speech, speech is going to generate a file, and that file has to be stored somewhere. So we are often going to use an Azure storage account for that particular file. So we're going to build the storage account first. And then in that storage account, we'll have to build a container. Now, the next question will be, how are we going to authenticate from the MCP server to that storage account? And typically, what we're seeing is we'll expose that by way of a shared access signature or a SAS token. Let's take a look at doing just that. We're going to go into Foundry. We're going to build a project that we need. We'll set up the storage account in the background, then we'll configure all of these to work together. So to give you an idea of what's going to happen, for the agent itself, when we go to configure the speech tool, the agent is going to need a place to write some files so that they can persist. We will be given links back to those files, but we're going to need some sort of accessible storage location. So we'll start by going into Azure, we'll build that storage location, then we will double back in here into agents and build our first agent there. So, but for starters, let's go into Azure and let's go build a storage account. Great. And we will create. We will drop that into our demo resources. What's the name of our Foundry? It doesn't have to match, but I might as well make it match. Demo 4790. So we will say demo 4790 storage, probably going to be fine. And we will deploy that to East US. This doesn't really matter, but we'll tell it it's going to be blob storage. In terms of redundancy, we really don't care, so we'll just grab the cheapest option that we have, and we will go build. Just need a place, a bucket in the sky where we can put all of this. Create. Won't take but a second. Once we get there, we are going to build a container where Foundry has access. So we'll create the container first, and then what's called a shared access signature, which is basically giving access with, in essence, a URL. So we'll swing off to the storage account. We'll go into containers, and we can call this container anything. It doesn't really matter. We'll call it files and create. These don't take any time at all. Here we are. And we will then create a shared access signature for this. Signing key, that's all good. Good for the day. Excellent. We want to give it the ability to add, create, write, and list the items that are there. Give it the correct permissions so that the Foundry has the ability to create new files there, ask what files are there. That's the permission set that we just granted. And create token. Then we will copy the URL that has the signature in it. Now we can use, I think that's all we need here. If we need, we'll come back, but I think we're in pretty good shape. We'll swing over to Foundry. We will then go build a brand new agent. So this agent here, we'll give the name Speech Agent. And we'll just give kind of default permissions right there and validate that. We've got just at least the basics going. We'll come back and change both of those or the instructions. Yes, that works. Save. We will be back. We're going to swing into the tools section here, and we are going to create a new tool. So similar to what we saw earlier with our language, we're going to do the same thing with speech. We're going to go into the catalog here and look up the items that are speech, Azure Speech MCP server. Delightful. Pick that and create. Then a little bit of configuration. So the name of our Foundry resource right here is demo 4790-resource. We'll need to grab the key for that in a second. We'll do keybase. So what is grab key? The home tab here. Grab that. Boom. And we will paste in this is that SAS URL that you saw me build just a second ago for our storage account. In that SAS URL is the location of the storage account, is the name of the container, along with, in essence, the credentials. Okay. So we now have one more tool, the Azure Speech MCP server, like that. And we can head back to our agents. We'll look at the speech agent, and we'll go into the tools. Again, do we need a web search? We'll leave it in there for now. But we will go and add our tools in here. Let's grab speech. There we go. Speech server, add tool. As the name implies, this is an MCP server, so we will have to give a little bit of permissions there. The rest should be pretty decent. Let's go to our instructions. You're an AI agent that uses AI speech to transcribe. Okay, so that's pretty good. So we will ask it then to generate. And we'll say, hey, do me a favor, generate to be or not to be, that is the question. Being MCP, permissions first. Okay, we will approve. We'll simplify here. We will always approve all the MCP server tools so that we don't have to go back and do it again. Okay, so it should have generated it and given us a link to
be or not to be, that is the question.
Now let's go take a look at the transcription side of things. So we're going to swing back into the Foundry and we're going to say, hey, let's go ahead and grab a transcription. Here, transcribe a file that we have remotely. And perfect. So brevity is the soul of wit. We can, if we needed proof.
Brevity is the soul of wit.
There we are. Lovely. So our agent is in good shape. It runs both the ability to create speech output and to transcribe. So now let's just take a look at some of the code. And it won't be a lot. This will be pretty straightforward. I suppose since I'm here, let's grab the endpoint. And we will drop that into our code. We've seen that, or into our environment variable. We've seen that a bunch before. And let's take a look at our code base. So default Azure credential, AI project client. Only two things we really need at this point. This is very similar to what we've seen before. Pass in the endpoint, pass in the credential. That gives us a client that we can invoke. We're grabbing from that client, we're grabbing the OpenAI client. And it is one call. Response create, where we're passing in whatever the input is. And again, that additional bit of metadata when we want to call a pre-built agent that's already sitting on the server. So it's an agent reference in there. We're going to specify the agent name and a type-in reference, and then output. So that should be it, right? Very, very simple when most of the work is being done on the server. So let's get into the terminal here. Okay. And everything is activated already. We've got all of our dependencies downloaded, so we should just be able to say Python and our speech client. Once it gets up and running, we can then go in and say, hey, give a prompt and ask to synthesize better a witty fool than a foolish wit using Sonia's neural voice. If you were here in earlier examples a little bit ago, you may recall that I had neglected to give all the permissions, but those should already be there this time around. Perfect. Gives us our storage account here. We will open that up and we should have
better a witty fool than a foolish wit.
Life is good. And then, again, we will ask to transcribe. And we have the transcription. Downloaded it. Brevity is the soul of wit. Right. So that was fun. Let's go wrap this up. All right, let's review. What two core capabilities does the Azure Speech MCP server expose to agents? Hope you're getting this one by now. speech-to-text, text-to-speech. Okay. Why does the Azure Speech MCP server require an Azure storage account? To store input audio files and output audio files generated by the speech tools. And finally, what credentials are needed when connecting the Azure Speech MCP server to a Foundry agent? Foundry resource key and a SAS URL for that blob container. We learned in this one the Speech MCP server was used for agent-based audio tasks. Typically, we will need to go and create a storage account and container beneath the covers to store both the inputs and the outputs for those audio files. The configuration is typically going to use a SAS token to share out the container beneath the covers. And then we took a look at a client app so that we can call into those speech-enabled agents. In this session, we put a voice to our agents via MCP server. We understood the server and connected to it. Thank you for participating in this Develop AI Apps and Agents on Azure course. I hope you enjoyed learning how to extend the Foundry agents with voice. I encourage you to remain curious and continue exploring new capabilities. That's how we all stay relevant. There are many ways to continue your learning journey. I invite you to search for your next favorite topic on Microsoft Learn at aka.ms/learn.